Hey, really glad you joined in. Today, we're going to talk about carrying the narrative. And by that, I mean the stories, the storyline that are in our ancestral systems and traditions, and those people that came before us. I'm talking way back in the lineage. Because as an adult, you can certainly see the relationships and the trauma replaying in your own lifetime. I grew up in a very chaotic family. There were two pseudo adults who were hurt and abused children and came to the marriage and the creation of children with trauma that was unhealed from generations back. And then they created a family with five children and passed along the trauma and maybe even intensified it as a result of their unhealed trauma. And as a young kid, I mean, very way back, I was very cognizant of what was happening, the abuse. I have memories back to 18 months. And let's just say the abuse covered every nook and cranny and was slathered in every crevice of the home that I grew up in. And I was a super empath. I could sense the tenor tone and the emotion. I could feel it. And I had a desire, a passion, a desperation to fix it. So my role was to play the negotiator within my parents very early on. They had brutal fights, most of them late at night. And I remember being woken when I was probably 7 years old and rolling out of the bottom bunk, hearing my mother outside my door pleading for her life. And my father had a weapon in his hand. And I opened the door and just screamed, "Stop!" And then promptly fainted. But that was an example of the abuse playing itself out. My father was shellacking his grief from his own upbringing with alcohol and acting out sexually. My mother came from horrendous abuse where she was victimized and then expected to cover it and act as if nothing was wrong. And she soothed with food. And back then, diet pills were prescribed for that, which is speed. So I was being raised by two individuals who I believe were addicts and didn't have a solid, healthy platform. The difficulty was my mother could be so kind, and then the next minute she would be beating me for what I didn't know, almost to the point of where I was blacking out. So it was very tenuous, very unsafe. And I wanted to get out of there as soon as possible, which I did. But then what I noticed in my late adolescence and early adulthood, I saw the same flags. I was creating the same abusive relationships. And I remember asking both my grandmothers if they had the choice to marry my grandfathers again, would they? And both of them said absolutely not. They would not. And my paternal grandmother bought a boarding house at the Jersey Shore so she could take her older son, my father, in the summers, along with the rest of the family, her husband and my other uncle, to take care of his health. And she would be running around when I would see her there, like just central nervous system on overdrive, taking care of the gas and the cleaning and the cooking and the preparation, while her husband was like ordering her around from one of the living areas. Same thing when we'd be at the house. He would just be bombastic and sarcastic and abusive. He wanted to be the kid. He didn't want to be the parent. So, and that's what I was experiencing in my family growing up. That's carrying that same trauma. So here I am as a young adult and clear enough to see. oh, this isn't right. I know this scenario. I'm not going to live this. I promised myself I wasn't going to live this. And I did get help so I could learn to unfreeze my frozen emotions that I had learned to just shut down and ignore at all costs and move forward, basically carrying the trauma, sucking it up. So much so that I had become shut down. I could barely get happy, mad, sad, glad. I didn't really want to experience those emotions. And with help, I could slowly uncover the abuse and stop living the consequences of what I had experienced and what I was carrying through the generational line. So it wouldn't be as impactful in everyday life. And I became cognizant and aware and could understand that, yes, my family had brutality mixed in many of the generations, but it also gave us strong resilience to move through this. And now I could choose to break the cycle. And this has been a repetitive experience. It wasn't that I went within and I figured out all my emotions and I got clear and calm and got the tools and now I'm fine. I just speed through life. That's not been my experience. What my experience has been is I have the privilege of moving through multiple challenges. It's almost like they came by the decades. There was a decade of dealing with addiction and getting used to working with that. And I've been clean and sober ever since I was 25 years old. So that's been my like bargain basement for me. It's not for everyone. And then I went for a decade of really learning how to deal with clinical depression. I had suicidal ideation since I was 6 years old. And that experience, that decade where I was often on medication, really taught me how to work with my depression and get off the elevator before I really crashed and hit bottom. And I haven't been on medication since. I have enough tools now that I know what to do and how to work with it. And then ultimately, it was really the perfect storm in coming to understand the intensity of how narcissistic abuse had affected my life. I didn't understand what narcissism was and how it really came to play to suck my energy from me and how I was living not from my own being and from my own inner heart, but I was placating. So I was living from the outside in, placating, being the chameleon, being what I thought other people wanted, giving other people what they may have wanted, even when it was at my own expense. Clearly, I ultimately found that divorcing an alleged narcissist was a gift and that he has been one of my greatest gurus as a teacher. Even though it was a hellacious experience, I wouldn't want to wish it on anyone. It was extremely unjust. It was horrendous, but I could go through the experience welcoming in the challenge and choosing to learn from what I was giving away. And that's when I really came to value my own heart. And that's when I came to value my worth, my creativity, my incredible, miraculous gifts as a human being. And I started to learn how to authentically live from inside. I no longer attracted abusive relationships to earn my keep. It's kind of twisted, but it's been an incredible opening. And I know you're experiencing it now as well because the energies are lifting. We are beings with high frequency. Our DNA is incredibly valuable. I believe we've been programmed by our systems in a very unhealthy way to believe some wacky truths about our own value and our own ability to create. And that happens when you do the work. You go inside and you face your demons, you face your scenarios, and you create your legacy, your authentic legacy, which is one of light and expansion and beauty and safety. And then you stop the intergenerational trauma and you give to others, whether it be your family members, your friends, your colleagues, or the global collective. And I'm really going to encourage you to take a shot at it just for today. And I'm welcoming you for a free one-to-one conversation. It's called a grounding activation. So we can calm the nervous system and you'll be at a place where you can start to do the work to heal for real and move forward and then help the next person up the line. So thanks for tuning in. Great to have you here. Remember, we are in this together, and there's lots of tools at susangold.us.